Russian missile strikes on Kyiv as the head of the United Nations visits the Ukrainian capital.
This says a lot about Russia's attitude to global institutions, about the efforts of the Russian leadership to humiliate the UN and everything the organization represents.
A British man has been killed whilst fighting in Ukraine. Military veteran Scot Sibley was serving with Ukrainian forces.
Friday morning papers for you, and some of the front pages featuring photographs of the former British soldier who's said to have been killed while fighting in Ukraine. Tributes to Scot Sibley have flooded in. This is the Metro saying that one former comrade described him as having a commando spirit until the end.
Now, The Guardian says that the US President Joe Biden has defied threats from Vladimir Putin by doubling the country's aid to Ukraine.
The UK government plans to send 8,000 troops to Eastern Europe. That's what the Daily Telegraph is calling one of the largest deployments since the Cold War. President Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to humiliate the United Nations by launching a missile strike on the capital, Kyiv, during a visit by the organization's Secretary-General.
Antonio Guterres was visiting the city to hold talks with the president and criticised the UN Security Council for failing to prevent or stop the war. Gareth Barlow reports.
Missile strikes in the centre of Kyiv, the first for 2 weeks. 2 Russian rockets struck a 25-storey building close to where the head of the UN was staying during a visit to the country. Several people were left injured by the attack.
I was shocked to be informed that 2 rockets had exploded in the city where I am. So this is a dramatic war, and we absolutely need to end this war, and we absolutely need to have a solution for this war.
The missile struck just hours after the UN Secretary-General criticised the organisation's Security Council for failing to prevent or end the war, saying the situation was a source of anger, frustration and disappointment. Ukraine's president went further, saying Russia was now trying to humiliate the UN.
This says a lot about Russia's attitude to global institutions, about the efforts of the Russian leadership to humiliate the UN and everything the organization represents.
It's scenes like these that the US President Joe Biden says he's trying to prevent, with a proposed new aid package worth $33 billion, the majority of which to help increase Ukraine's air defence and artillery capacity, as well as offering further economic and humanitarian support.
This is a very important step by the United States, and I am grateful to the American people and personally to President Biden. I hope that the Congress will quickly support this request for help for our state.
NATO says it's ready to support Ukraine for years to come, as it warns the war could drag on. And as Russia shows it's fully prepared to strike at the heart of the country during an official visit by the UN, and as President Putin increasingly warns the West to back off, it seems NATO's warning could easily prove to be true. Gareth Barlow, BBC News.
Let's go to a correspondent now, Joe Inwood, who's in Kyiv for us this morning. Joe, these are the first strikes in the city for, what, some 2 weeks now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to get lulled into a false sense of security, I guess. Kyiv has seemed a place that was relatively safe, so much so that we've had high-profile visitors, no more so than Antonio Guterres. But yesterday, that sense of peace was shattered. He was standing, actually, as it happens, just a couple of metres where I am now, yesterday evening, doing an interview with the BBC, and he was visibly shaken. The United Nations angry that this attack happened while he was in town. And I think it's worth bearing in mind, this isn't just a missile attack. This is a missile attack on the centre of Kyiv, where the UN Secretary-General was staying, a couple of miles from where he was staying, by a member of the Permanent Security Council. It is a really extraordinary event. Of course, the UN say his safety was not jeopardised, he is fine. But the significance of this, the principle of it, I think has really got people angry.
Joe, thank you very much.
The Foreign Office has confirmed that a British national has been killed in Ukraine. The person hasn't yet been formally named, but sources in the country say the man is Scot Sibley, a military veteran who was fighting for Ukrainian forces.
Our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, has this report.
Scot Sibley was a former member of the British Army, part of the Commando Logistics Support Squadron, now named by sources in Ukraine as having died fighting Russian forces. On a fundraising page in his memory, friends offered their tributes, one saying, "He was a friend like no other, and the bravest person I've had the pleasure to know. His life may have been cut short, but he lived to the full." Scot Sibley was in his mid-30s. He had a family. 4 years ago, he had his hair shaved to raise money for his daughter when she had cancer.
The Foreign Office would not confirm Mr. Sibley's identity, saying only that a British national had died in Ukraine and they were supporting the family. The Foreign Office also said a second British national was missing and they were urgently seeking more information about their whereabouts.
Diplomatic sources said it was most likely the two individuals were foreign volunteers serving with Ukrainian forces in the Donbass. The authorities in Ukraine estimate about 20,000 foreigners have come to fight for them, likely to include hundreds of Britons. There have been reports before that British fighters have died in Ukraine. Some were thought to have been killed during a missile attack on this military training centre near Poland, but the deaths were never confirmed. So it would seem that Mr. Sibley is the first Briton confirmed to have died fighting in a war in which many thousands have already perished. James Landell, BBC News.